Just a quick warning, this video will contain explicit and sexual content. This is not a topic that can be treated lightly, and as such, viewer discretion is advised.
Hi y'all, it's Curious Raven. Today is kind of a video that some of y'all have been requesting. I have a couple stories that have happened as a correctional officer in prison. Alright, now this video, do not listen to it around your children. There are vulgar and sexual content. Okay, let's get down to it. Now this story happened to a fellow correctional officer, been in the department for a very, very long time. How he told me is that one day there was an inmate that had been in and out of suicide watch, and he would go in and then they would help him, and he'd go to the doctor, and then they'd get him help and medication, and then they would put him back into open population. Well, one time when they put him back in open population, in a dorm, there are 4 quads, and he was in open population. Back then, the doors were just regular doors, like you open and close to your bedroom door. Okay, so the door was open in his room, and the officer that was in the bubble, that's where the officer sits and controls all the doors and talks to the inmates and everything. All the inmates started freaking out and trying to get this officer's attention. Well, she called the officer of this story over to the dorm to help out, see what's going on, because she was by herself and she couldn't go down there. So he finally went in and he said what he saw. Wow, this guy cut himself with a razor blade. Right where your elbow on the inside bends, that little crease, he cut himself on both sides. And he said that he was standing in the middle of his room with his arms stretched out wide like a big hug. And it was just spraying blood everywhere, all over the walls. And as he was spinning like he was dancing in the rain. He told me that he didn't want to go in there by himself because it was dangerous. He didn't know if he wanted to harm him or come out and hurt one of the other inmates or hurt his coworkers or whatever. So, rule is isolate. So he shut the door and locked him inside until he could finally get someone, more officers and backup, to come and help him. He said that the inmates were not helping. I guess they thought that they could help. They didn't understand what was going on. They just wanted to get help for their fellow inmate. And they were telling the officer in the bubble to pop the door. Like signaling, pop the door, pop the door. So it was a couple times that this officer was popping the door, not knowing what was going on. And finally, the officer that was in, talking to the inmate, trying to get him to put down, the blade, talk him down. He had no idea what mental state he was in, things like that. And finally he got on the radio and said, "You better stop opening this door. Do not open it until I tell you to." And then, the door wasn't opened any longer. When backup got there, they all went in, and unfortunately they did have to handcuff the inmate because they didn't want him to hurt anybody or himself anymore. And at this point, when they handcuff him and put his hands behind his back, he was just had the blade kind of like just in his fingers. That was at that point where they took the blade from him, okay? And they got him to medical, and they got him stitched up. The one thing that the officer said that really got him was when he asked the inmate why he kept cutting himself. Why did he keep doing this? Because he said that this inmate, from his elbow to his wrist, it was all scars. Like there was not a clean piece of skin without a scar on it. So he's been self-harming for a very, very long time. So the inmate said that it makes him feel better. Like I said, he must have had so much baggage of whatever he did, regret, whatever, that he felt like he needed to hurt himself to feel better about himself. And there's a lot of inmates that kill themselves because they can't handle it. Well, you shouldn't have done what you did and got in prison. We are always told never to look up inmates because once we know what they did, why they're in prison, we would be biased. We wouldn't just treat them all the same anymore. And that's true. So he said he didn't know what he did, but it must have been sinister enough for him to keep trying to hurt himself. But the inmate was fine. He got help. He healed up fine. And then that was it. That was the end of that story. Okay, this one's crazy. He said that he heard a story about an inmate that cut his ball sack open by himself with a razor blade because the inmate stated that his balls felt dirty. So he literally took his balls out of the sack and was washing them in the bathroom sink. And then I guess when the inmate felt that they were clean, he tucked them back in and he actually tried to put his ball sack back together with toothpaste. You know there's something wrong with these people. Mentally ill or... That's crazy to me. He said that the inmate was taken to medical. They had to take him, wash everything out because he got toothpaste all... Oh my... I can't even imagine. Like, how do you not hurt from doing that? Mentally unstable people. So, the next story is about an inmate that was in suicide and self-harm observation. And when we put inmates in the cells that are like that, we take everything away. Everything. Even their clothes sometimes. It just depends on what level that they're at. So, he had nothing. And when he got sandwiches and stuff, it was just on just a plastic tray that they gave back right away. And just a sandwich. And, whatever little thing that they gave him to drink or eat. So, and this inmate was like really wanting to end his life. He was going to do it no matter what. And unfortunately, he found a way. He has a toilet in his room. So what he did was poop and pee for days without actually flushing it. And so it fermented and, that's really a lot of germs and horrible, okay? And then one time when they brought him a sandwich, when they weren't watching him, what he did was he dipped his sandwich into the toilet and ate it. Well, not even an hour or so after lunch, they hear the inmate screaming bloody murder, and he was in a fetal position on the floor. They called the ambulance, and they were taking him to the hospital, but he died on the way there from septic shock. But he got what he wanted. He succeeded by taking his life. These are just little tiny things that I've caught as an officer. And so have the fellow officer I got some of these stories from. People are like, oh, prison, don't they shove stuff up their butt and all that kind of stuff? Well, they do. He said that he caught one of them having 6 packs of cigarettes up their butt. And they were so good about bringing in contraband that because when they come in and out of the prison, they have to be strip searched. And they make them, bend over and cough or whatever to make sure they're not hiding anything up there. And there were ones that had been in prison for a long time, so they knew how to do it where it wouldn't come out and they could get it in. And he said that one guy had 6 cigarettes packets in his butt. Yeah, it's crazy. And then he also said he had one inmate that, bent over and coughed. And he said a lighter shot out of his butt and hit the floor. And it startled them. What the hell was that? To me, that's funny. When you have to work in this type of environment, you have to have a dark sense of humor. If you don't, it'll just eat you alive. The being around those type of people and having to deal with them all the time. Also, I remember one time I was a visitor park officer. Civilians come and visit inmates. And one time after a visit, we found 2 cell phones that were wrapped in plastic wrap, and they had blood all over them. So we're like, you know what? We know it was a female, and the disgusting part was that she was on her period. And because with visitors, we're not allowed to check that. We don't do cavity searches for visitors. She got those in somehow, but thank God we found them before he could walk out with them. Also, I heard that one visit on another shift, a freaking visitor came in with a crack pipe shoved in between her boobs. You know, hello, how do you think we would not see that? Crazy. Crazy, crazy people. Also, visitors have disgustingly used their children as mules to bring in contraband, like putting stuff in their babies' diapers to bring in. It's just horrible. And then they go to change their baby and they leave the dirty diaper. Well, there's contraband inside that dirty diaper. It's crazy. Like how manipulative these people are, and they're all criminals, and they're there for a reason. And okay, one more story, and then this will be the end. There was a story about an inmate that he went to prison for stealing, and he was a druggie. He needed to support his habit. Well, one day he was working on an outside crew of inmates, doing something on the side of the road, cleaning up or whatever. And supposedly he got too close, and there was a Walmart truck that passed by and couldn't stop. And it was like the Walmart truck clipped him and broke his arm. And you know, Walmart, hello. He wanted to sue them. I mean, yeah, he actually did file a lawsuit with Walmart. A few months later, he got out of prison, you know, and his lawsuit was still going on with Walmart. But he couldn't wait for his big payout. You know, once a criminal, always a criminal. He decided to do some more stealing. And unfortunately, the cops are called, you know, duh. The funny thing is that he jumps into a lake to hide from the cops. But karma gets him, and he was ate by a gator, and he never got his big Walmart settlement check. If he could have just waited, stayed clean, didn't do illegal stuff, and kept his head down, went through the settlement, didn't get back in prison, he'd be rich, probably millions, and it just blows my mind. Could have turned his life around. I know these were kind of weird stories. I don't know if this is exactly what you meant, but every time on my lives when I talk about how I used to be a correctional officer and what the inmates did and all that stuff, I want to start out with this first, but I also want to do a second video to this about things that we have learned that inmates did in prison. The worst of the worst of why they were in there. You know, just like their little tidbit story of why they went to prison. Because there's a lot. But I hope you enjoy this. I am going to start working on a true crime case. And I'm hoping, no promises, because I have no clue how I'm going to feel in a couple days. But that I will at least get it out to you by Sunday. That's what I'm hoping. I want to do some research this weekend and put something together for y'all and get it out this weekend. So, alright, y'all. I love y'all so much. Thank you for being here and listening to everything. Just know that these videos will have that warning that this is real life. This is real stuff that people have done behind the story of having to work in a prison and things you deal with. Please stay tuned for my next video. But until then, remember, it's scary out there.